Hello and welcome to this tutorial, and in this tutorial we are going to talk about how to connect our Android application to an online database. So in the previous tutorial we have created an Android application, and basically what we did is that instead of connecting the Android application to an online database, what we have done is that we have basically connected it with a database which lies on our local host. Now the main problem with that is that it is okay if we actually want to test our Android application while developing it, we could actually connect it to a local host. But when you actually want to launch your application so that public could use it, so in that case what we need to do is that instead of storing the data on the local host, we actually need to store in the data of our Android application onto the online server. Now the next thing which we need to learn is that how to basically set up an online server. And the thing is that we actually don't need to set up an online server. We could actually rent a online server. So basically, in order to get hosting so that you could basically host your data or you could host your database, what we actually need to do is that we actually need to buy in web hosting. So if we simply go to Google and if we simply type in like buy web hosting and hit enter, you will see multiple options over here to basically buy web hostings, and they are actually very cheap. So basically, as long as you don't need to save much data for your Android application, you are good to go. Now for the sake of this tutorial, what we are going to do is that as we are basically developing Android applications for just basically learning purposes, instead of buying a web hosting, what we could do is that we could basically use something which is called as free web hosting. So we simply type in free web hosting, and there are actually multiple options available in the free web hosting range. But what you could do is that you could simply select this, which is 000webhost.com. So this website actually provides us free web hosting which includes PHP and MySQL. So that's exactly what we need for our Android application at the moment. So basically you could go with this option right here, or there are also many other options available and you could choose accordingly. But what I would recommend is that you go with this thing right here. Now the another reason for using an online database even for learning purposes is that whenever we actually develop Android applications which are connected to a database, like if you host your database on your local server, then what you need to do is that you could actually run the applications only on the emulator. So basically, if you have connected your device to your PC so as to basically debug or run your Android applications, so in that case we actually cannot use localhost, and I found certain problems by using localhost on an actual device. So basically, if you want to run your Android database application on an actual device, it is better to go with the online database. And also this free web hosting which I have recommended is basically only for learning purposes, and they are actually not that much reliable. So make sure that if you are developing an original application like where you need to host your data on a database, so I would recommend you to buy a web hosting rather than going for a free one. And also the free web hosting has many disadvantages, but if you simply cannot afford to buy a web hosting just for learning purposes, then go with this. And also the paid web hosting offers much better user experience in terms of basically handling the backend. So basically it has much better UI to basically create a database, add in your files and all that kinds of things. So if you could basically buy a web hosting, then simply go for that. Or if you couldn't, so simply switch to this 000 web host. So it basically allows us to create our account and it is going to assign us a domain name. So this is my domain name right here. So if I open it up, it is going to redirect me to this page, and I have modified this page a little bit. So this is the home page of our website. Now the next thing which we need to do is that after creating an account, we actually need to set up the database into this domain. So simply go to cpanel. So this is basically the admin area for our website. Now in here we will have multiple options. So what we want to do is that we want to actually select the option which is called as PHP My Admin, which is under database. and that is because we are currently dealing with databases. So simply select this, and after doing that, what you could do is that you could basically create a MySQL database, and I have already created two databases here. So I'm going to select the second database, and actually the steps for creating database are quite simple. So you could basically create in the database, and after creating a database, when you select it, you will get this thing right here, which is basically similar to what we were getting in a local host. So this is the admin area for managing our databases. Now we could create a database here. So let's go ahead and create a database called as, let's say, users, and let's say the number of fields in users are 4. So simply type this information in and hit go. Now as you could see, we are prompted with a new window which basically is asking us to enter the name of the fields and basically all the values inside the fields. Sorry, not the values, the actual type of the field and then the actual length of the field. So let's go ahead and enter some random fields. So let's say we want to store the name, and let's say we want to store the email, contact, and let's say password. So let's say we have these 4 fields which we want to basically store. Now the next thing which we do is that we assign a type to it. So basically let's assume that we actually want to what you could say save text here, and now let's say the values are 30, 30 and 30. So once we are done with this, we simply click save, and this should create a new database for us. So once we have created the table, this is what we get. So this is basically the table which has 4 fields: name, email, contact and password, and this is pretty much the same thing which we have done in the previous tutorials. But the thing is that we have done this thing in an online database, and I just wanted to show you that this is very much similar to what we have done on the local host. The only thing is that the admin panel for this has a little bit different theme. So once this thing is set up, the next thing which we do is that we actually need to try to establish a connection to this online database. So basically, in order to set up a connection, what we need to do is that we need to write in a PHP script to basically set up a connection to this thing right here. So actually, even before setting up the connection, we are going to need some information related to our database. Now the information which we actually need is going to be the host name, the database name, the username and password, and also we'll require a domain name for our website. You can actually purchase a domain name, but if you actually want a free domain name, then this free hosting site actually provides us with a free domain name as well. So we actually need to extract these 4, or you could say 5 parameters even before trying to establish a connection, and the reason for that is that these parameters are actually needed to define to basically tell the server so as to basically which database we are going to connect to. So we could easily get this information. So for example, if we switch to this panel right here, as you could see, it is telling us that the server is basically the local host. So basically what this thing means is that the host name is localhost, and even if this is not a local host, it is named as localhost. So make sure that you add this name over there, and in your case it might be something different, but in most of the cases it is localhost. Now it has also assigned me a database name, so which is this, and actually if we have a look at here, this thing right here is nothing but the database name. And now for the SQL user and password, this is basically the username and password, and this username and password are basically different from your login and password, which basically allows us to open an account in this website. So basically this login and password are basically the login and password of a user which has an access to basically database. So these login and passwords will be provided to you when you sign up for this thing right here in your email. So basically if you check your email, you will be having these 2 passwords to basically access the database. So remember that these passwords are different from the login credentials of the website. So make sure that you have all these info even before you start writing a script so as to basically connecting to a database. So once we have this info, we are basically good to go. So we could simply write in the PHP script for establishing connection. So we type in PHP and let's go ahead and save this file as connect.php, and I'm going to save it on desktop. So simply save this thing and select the file type as all types and simply click save. And now we could type in the code so as to basically establish the connection. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create 4 variables: host, database, user and password. So I'm going to type in $host equals, I'm going to leave it empty, and later on I'm going to copy the things from here. Then I'm going to type in $database equals, then the next parameter is the username. So we type $username equals, and finally $password. So once we have these things, let's simply go ahead and copy these things into this PHP file. So basically I'm going to copy all these things. Okay, now once we have these 4 fields set up, the next thing which we could do is that we could basically write in the query so as to basically establish a connection. So we type $con equals mysqli underscore connect, and in there we could simply specify the parameters. So the very first parameter is going to be the host name. So we type $host. Then the second parameter is the username. So we type $username. Then the third parameter is going to be the password. So we type $password. And the final thing which we are going to type in is going to be the database name. So we type $database. Okay, so once we are done with this, we are good to go. Now the only thing which we need to do is that we need to execute this query and check if it is successful. So we type if not con, and what this thing means is that we are basically not connected to a database. So we want to echo connection. This is wrong, actually this should be, so we type connection unsuccessful, and else if it is false, so we actually want to echo connection successful. So I'm going to simply copy this statement and I'm going to simply paste it over here and just simply change this thing to successful. Okay, now once this thing is done, we are basically good to go. So now what we need to do is that we actually want to copy the contents of this file, and we actually want to put these contents into the actual server. So if we open up this admin panel, what you could do is that you could simply go back, and here we actually want to search for the file manager. So this is the file manager right here. So simply open your file manager, hit continue, and actually for accessing a file manager, we will be having a different username and password, and the details or the username and password are actually going to be provided when you get an email from this 000 web host. So make sure to check your email, and you will be having details to basically set up the, or so to basically access the file manager. And also one more thing which I would like to point out is that whenever we are using free web hosting services, so in that case what might happen is that sometimes the servers are actually down and we cannot actually have an access to the file manager. So if you are not able to access file manager, so wait for a little bit of time and basically try again. And if you don't want to wait, then my best advice would be go for a paid web hosting. It offers much better service at a lower price. So simply click continue and you will be redirected to your file manager. Now in this file manager, we actually want to go to this public_HTML folder, and all the files which are basically accessible to public are actually present over here. So we simply need to go here, and remember, please do not upload anything over here. So these files are actually reserved, and actually we have a special folder which is called as public_html, so as to basically upload our files. So simply click this thing, and here we could actually go ahead and create multiple files. So let's go ahead and create a new file. So select this option which says new file, and let's name this thing as init.php, and we are going to basically type in the PHP code over here. So once we are done with this, we basically save the code, and in order to check it if this thing performs correctly, what we do is that we go back, and actually now we need the domain name. So my domain name is this, so yours might be a little bit different. So the only thing which you need to do is that copy your domain name and paste it over here and give a slash and type in init.php and hit enter. And I think I have an error over there in my PHP script, so I'm going to simply check it. Where's my error? And now let's go ahead and check where our actual error lies, and there it is. So basically I have missed a semicolon over here. So once we have added the semicolon, simply hit save, and again you could simply refresh this page. Okay, so I was not able to basically connect to the server, and actually what I did is that when I checked into my email, as you could see for the MySQL while using PHP, it has asked us to basically change the host to this thing right here. So this is my host name. So what I did is that when I simply replaced this thing with instead of localhost, what I did is that I've typed in the host name which is provided by the web host. So when I replace this and when I saved the code and when I return back to this page and when I hit refresh, it actually showed me connection successful. So make sure that you actually extract the proper details for your database, or else you are going to have an error creating or error to actually connecting to the database. So once we are done with this, we are basically good to go. Now the next thing which we do is that we create a simple HTML form to basically try to check if we could insert some values into the database. So basically we are also going to write in the PHP script so as to basically insert values into the database, and to check if that PHP script actually performs, we are going to design a simple HTML form to insert values into the database. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we'll be writing the PHP script so as to basically insert values into the online database and check if we could actually perform the database insertion operation. So thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you.